Good morning, everybody. We'll be starting the webinar in about a minute's time. We'll be starting in about 20 seconds. Okay, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody, and a warm welcome to our webinar on the Indian market. And we really appreciate everybody for joining us this morning. My name is Paul Wagner from the Nordic Tourism Collective, and together with our colleagues and partners at ETOA, we're delighted to welcome you to this very special webinar on what we believe is a very important and exciting source market, India. And it's very important that Europe is ready for such a developing market. And that's why we've chosen to have this webinar today at this time of the year. Let me just give you a few little bits of data from a Skift article, which was written very recently. Let me just make a few quotes for you. India is projected to surpass China as the world's most populous destination in 2023. Projections show a full recovery for the Indian outbound market in 2024, with outbound travelers reaching 28.5 million in 2025. Another quote is Generation Z and millennials comprise the largest share of the population in India, constituting an important consumer group with disposable incomes fueling recovery of the tourism sector. And a couple more. Destinations are coming to India with road shows and training programs, and international airlines are also increasing connectivity from more Indian cities. And finally, with aircraft orders from India set to drive global jet sales and Air India preparing to make a substantial investment and a historical aircraft order, all of this speaks volume that this country has huge potential for outbound tourism. There are, of course, some challenges which we will cover as well during this webinar, but I'm delighted today to say that we have an absolutely fabulous panel to join us here this morning. And I'm delighted to introduce them. They're going to give you a quick wave now. First of all, Jude D'Souza, the Associate Vice President of Flight Center Meetings and Events. Good morning, Jude. Just give us a wave. Hi there, Jude. Paramjit Bara, who's the founder and principal of Auxilia Networks and heads up LVG Learning in India, former from Visit Britain as well. Good morning, Paramjit. I'd like to welcome Uma Somia, who's the owner of Europe Incoming DMC. Good morning, Uma.
Morning.
And Uma's colleague, Dylan, Director of Europe Incoming. Good morning, Dylan. And finally, Mahip Agarwal, who is the partner of us, the Nordic Tourism Collective in India. Good morning, Mahip.
Good morning and good afternoon to India. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be having one other panelist joining us very shortly, which is Ankush Nijhawan, who's the director and co-founder of TBO.com. Hopefully he'll be with us very soon. He'll just join in. So let's get going with the panel. And I'd like each panelist to just introduce themselves and their organizations. And say hi to us and put some context about this. So let me start with Jude, if that's okay. Good morning to you, Jude.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone from India. My name is Jude D'Souza. I'm Associate Vice President for FCM meetings and events. We are part of the FCM Flight Center group, which is based out of Australia. And our main business is corporate travel and MICE. Yeah.
Super,
Thank you.
And it's very important that we get a barometer of how the MICE and corporate business is looking as well. So that will be very much part of our discussions. Thank you, Jude. I'd like to introduce Paramjit. Please come and say hello.
Hi, Paul. Hello, everyone in India and around the world who's tuned in. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to thank the Nordic Tourism Collective and ETOA for the opportunity to be part of a panel with such fantastic co-panelists. My name is Paramjit. I'm based in the Delhi, in the National Capital Region. I've spent about 22 years in the tourism business, started with Visit Britain, and then moved on to Destination New South Wales in Australia. I headed the India office for about 10 years. I'm now running my own tourism consultancy business based out of Gurgaon and trying to increase engagement between overseas tourism entities and Indian ones to foster business. Thank you.
Super, thank you very much. Uma, could you say hello to you?
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Uma Somya, and along with Dylan Lal, we are the co-owners of Europe Incoming. We're a destination management company, and we have been around for over 40 years. We deal with all aspects of incoming into Europe, and we've been dealing with the Indian market for about 25 years now.
Super. So it's great. And hi, Dylan, and looking forward to hearing from you both. Yeah, to learn how to handle the Indian market is something that's very, very important. So we'll be looking forward to hearing your comments on many of the questions today. Mahip, good morning.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning, everyone. So I am Mahip Agarwal, and I am representing NTC as a source market partner for India market. And we have been planning to do this webinar since a very long time. And I'm happy that finally we are here today to discuss more about India market as an outbound partner for such an amazing destination, Europe and Scandinavia. Thank you.
Super, thank you very much. And Ankush, good morning. Welcome. Welcome. If you could just say hi and just introduce yourself and the organization, that'd be lovely. Thanks, Ankush.
Thanks, Paul, and sorry for joining a couple of minutes late. So, Paul, I run the largest B2B platform in the country today, which does about a little more than $3 billion of top line, out of which 1.3 billion is hotels. We are the third largest B2B seller for room nights in the world, and by far the number one in India today, which approximately $280 million of room nights, which sell outbound to India. For us, Scandinavia is one of the fastest growing for us, what we've experienced in the last 1 year. It is the flavor of the season for people looking at Scandinavia in particular. So power about 28,000 monthly active travel agents in India, apart from our global playbook, which we operate in about 100 countries. Middle East is our number one market after India, Latin America is number two, etc., etc. But I think the idea here is to be talking about the Indian outbound. So that's our focus. So that's what TB is all about.
Super, thank you very much. And just hearing those figures, Ankush, just it's just amazing that the size of your organization and put that together with the whole country. It's certainly very exciting. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's start asking the questions now. And I'd like just to start with a general point to our panelists, and just to ask you how business from your company generally is looking has been in 2022, and how things are looking for 2023. I think that's the first thing our audience would like to hear. How are things looking for 2023? Maybe Ankush, I could start with you once again. Obviously, being a rather large organization, how was 22 in terms of the recovery, and how does things look generally for 2023?
So, Paul, every company in the world has had an excellent 2022. Okay, and I can say this because I speak to many operators across, and because of the pent-up demand, it was very, very obvious, when the world opened up after 2 years, everybody was obviously looking to go and travel here and there. So do I have 22 as a year which, to be a year which we should discuss? I don't think, because, it was very obvious, of the numbers all of us witnessed with margins, etc. I think 2023 is the real year after 2019. And I believe it's probably going to be one of the best years we have witnessed from India in outbound. And reasons why I say this is because, first of all, very beautifully positioned economically right now. I think India is doing very well when it comes to economics. Two, the inventory, what I feel will be parked for flights in India will be by far more than ever before, because a lot of aircrafts which are kind of hanging in Europe, and which can't fly into China for reasons, right? I think India is going to take a large share, there, and our inventory for outbound travel would be the highest number of seats versus 2019. Second, I think the world is looking at India right now. I think everybody wants a piece of India. That's something which will go in our favor. Third, I think the visa challenges which India faced in 2022, which I think will be resolved this year, especially for the summer. So I think we are on the right track, for the growth, and I think it's going to be a fabulous year in terms of all destinations in particular. But I think Europe is going to be one of the big ones this summer, starting March, because I think the visa applications, etc., are pretty robust and should be seamless for applicants.
That's a great positive spin, and I think you touched on a couple of the three key points, which is the pent-up demand, which is still there, the economics, and India is one of the few countries which is definitely going in the right direction these days. A little bit happier story than maybe it is in Europe, and of course the flights situation that it looks very positive in terms of additional flights and getting similar access to Europe as it was in 2019. So thank you very much for that update. Can I maybe ask Jude, any update from your side, maybe on a MICE perspective? How's it looking for 2023?
So from the corporate point of view, since I handle MICE, the group started moving in the month of March itself, 22. So we had, like we earlier heard, that there was a pent-up demand. Also, the corporates had enough and more budgets. The only challenge was the destinations. So the number of destinations were less. So mostly there were short-haul destinations which happened. So Dubai, Turkey was the main destination that happened in 2022. Europe had its challenges from the visa point of view. So hence, most of the movements were happening to countries like Dubai, Turkey, and in the later part of the year, you had destinations coming up like from Singapore and Thailand. So you have larger groups moving to these destinations as well. In 23, we are looking at a similar trend. We are getting a lot of queries from corporates for short-haul destinations. Because the visa challenge is still real, you do not have many countries who are giving visas in a smooth, seamless manner. So you have very few European countries giving visas. Even in 23, US is not giving any visas. So we are looking, the trends even going forward is we're looking at mostly short-haul destinations. Few movements happening to European destinations, like for example, France, Switzerland, and a couple of other countries who are proactively working with the corporates and travel agents for visas. So this is, and US is not yet open as yet. They're still working on their visas. So we're looking at short haul destinations in 23 and some movements happening to Europe. Yeah. Thank you.
Paul, you're on mute actually.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's very clear that the MICE and corporate is slightly behind the ledger in terms of recovery, in terms of the challenges with the visa. So we hope that's something sorted out. It sounds to me that the nearby metropolises like Dubai, like Thailand and Singapore will benefit first from that sector, and obviously Europe a little bit later on. So thanks for the update from the corporate side. Mahip, hi. Any updates? How do you feel about business to the Nordic region from the Indian outbound market?
The business to the Nordic region is amazing. As said by Ankush sir, that yeah, there are a lot of issues with the visas. Apparently, because of visas, the things are not very smooth, especially for the Scandinavian countries, where the visas takes minimum 3 to 4 weeks. It's very difficult for passengers to plan. FITs are still okay. People can still wait for visas and they make their date changes. But for the big corporates and the big groups moving, visa could be a biggest hurdle for India market. But I think looking at the things improving in last few days, I'm sure like in next couple of weeks, visas and tickets, the flight tickets fares will be sorted. And I'm really looking forward for an amazing big group movements also from India to Nordic region. Now, the problem with the Nordic little bit inbound is that they are still not very 100% equipped with logistic support to handle such big groups from India, especially when it comes to serving to big groups with Indian food requirements, or hotels are not very highly, inventories are limited in most of the hotels. So that could be one of the reasons. But I have seen like during my last visit to Copenhagen and Sweden, I have seen like there are a lot of new hotels coming up, but that was before COVID. But after COVID, I'm sure those new hotels will be operational, and then there will be huge inventories for Indian market to welcome the Indian passengers.
Super, thank you. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear, Mahip, that there are the visa issues there as well, plus the destination and infrastructure, which we will talk a little bit about later. So thank you very much for that. Paramjit, hi, what are your thoughts for 2023 from your side?
Paul, I just want to make one thing very clear about how I see this, is that I don't think any country bounced back from post-COVID depression like India did. This unbridled enthusiasm. You gave us some statistics at the beginning of the session. Let me add a few more to your list. Airlines is a company that looks at air movement around the company, and they talked about Air India ordering 500 planes pretty soon, so that that's a record order. We've also seen reports from the Singapore Tourism Board saying that India is now their second largest tourist market, and which has not been the case in the past. A recent OAG report in December said that India outpaced other Asia Pacific countries with a faster rebound and expected to become the new China in the next 5 years. And Booking.com has said that Indians have emerged as Asia Pacific's most confident travelers, with a staggering 86% of Indians intending to travel in 2023. So things are really looking up. Obviously, there are obstacles and challenges, like you said. But I also believe that the growth of the Indian tourism market is not just going to come from the big metros. It's going to come from the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And one of the first partners that I took on board for India when I started my consultancy was LBG Learning, based out of London, because we both had a common vision that we need to have a platform that can educate agents in the tier 2 markets, and we also need to educate agents on the other side of the spectrum in Europe to make them India ready. So it's just going to be a boom year. Yes, I agree with Ankush and I agree with Mahip. The visa issues are there, but they'll get sorted. Flight tickets are still expensive. I think there might be some rationalization over the next couple of months. The American embassy announced just a day or two ago that they're looking to reinforce their infrastructure and try and reduce the turnaround time for visa applications. So things are looking positive, and obstacles are there to be overcome. But it's just absolutely gung-ho in India at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for that summary. And you touched on some points there, Paramjit, that we'll be moving on to in further questions. But I think it's absolutely true that the rebound, the recovery, I think shows the resilience of the Indian market. And I think that's what maybe people have maybe taken for granted a little bit in the past. This market is super resilient and ready to travel. So thank you very much for that. Now it's time for a DMC perspective on this. And Uma, who has been working on the Indian market in Europe for many years, what's your feeling about how things are looking for 2023 on the ground in Europe?
Well, I think they're better than 2022 for sure. I'm not sure whether we are going to achieve the levels of 2019. We specialize a lot in leisure groups, so we're speaking to the clients that we're working with currently. And there's a couple of factors, and I think Dylan will probably add to this. One of them is obviously the visa challenges that we're still having, and we're seeing the reality on ground. Airfares, we're seeing the reality on ground for that as well. But on top of that, there's a lack of supply in Europe. During COVID, a lot of things closed down. So, and because there's a lack of supply, the prices are very high. And so in 2019, you could have an affordable holiday in India in Europe for about £1,000. That's no longer the case. So I think India is a very optimistic market, and I'm sure it's going to grow, but I'm not sure whether we're going to see the same numbers as we did in 2019, not in groups, maybe in FITs, but not in groups. Dylan, what do you think?
No, I agree. Just based on sort of live data that we're getting back from our clients who are booking onto tours, the FIT market will move, the MICE market will move, but the leisure market is suffering massively. It's just that because the inflationary environment, it's doubled, the prices have more than doubled for holidays. So you have to consider that the normal Joe Bloggs consumer who's going to pay out of their pocket for to travel around Europe, it's double in price. So they're going to wait and watch. So there's a big wait and watch scenario happening with all the customers at the moment. But inflation is not going to go down in Europe for sure. It is going to stay where it is. It might go up a little bit more, but with all the other markets like the US and our non-Indian markets, they seem to have accepted the inflationary environment and they're buying. But the Indian market for us anyway has paused a little bit. And it's due to all these factors coming from all angles: visas, flight prices, ground service prices, things like that. But FITs and MICE for sure MICE is going to keep moving anyway, because it's a corporate, it's the companies that are paying for travel. It's not the individual passenger that's paying out their own pocket. So I think there is a bit of an adjustment. There's a shock at the moment in the market, and it just needs to adjust. Once it adjusts to the new price environment, then it will definitely go up very, very fast. Yeah.
Thanks, Dylan and Uma. Thanks for your perspective, and it's always important to hear what you feel on the ground dealing with the market from different customers in the market. I just want to drill down a little bit further now into the segments. And when we're talking about segments, we've touched on FIT, we've touched on maybe the ad hoc groups, the family smaller groups, the series, and MICE. I just wanted to maybe ask you, Ankush, what you're feeling in terms of segments. Which ones do you think, from your experience with being such a large organization, are the ones that are looking very positive at moving at a faster pace recovery in 2023?
I think, Paul, obviously leisure is a no-brainer, but I would segregate leisure, not just typical leisure what Europe has witnessed from India. I think cruise is becoming a big piece of our buying, and you will see many Indians traveling into cruise this summer, whether they go from the Nordic Baltic side of the Iceland, which is starting now in May, third week, is one of the most prominent ones being spoken about in the Indian travel fraternity at the moment. I think skiing is becoming extremely, extremely popular in India. It's very funny because none of us see snow, right? Most of us don't see snow, and for some reason we are skiing, right? So, it gives me a complex when I hear my friends doing that in St. Moritz or Majif or Courchevel, right? So I really want my children to, learn skiing because I think they'll have FOMO, in probably 20 years when they get to hear their friends are in Europe skiing, right? So these are these new things which are coming up, which is just not shopping in London and seeing Champs-Élysées, etc. I think the new India, people my age group between 40 and 50 today, really want to witness different things apart from just the typical Europe, what we all have witnessed. I think that's where the partners in Europe should gear up, for things just beyond shopping and theater in Europe.
So that's very interesting. So
and also, Paul, just to add, a lot of milestone events. A lot of people had their 40th this year at Ibiza, right? A lot of people had their EO and YPO conferences in Paris, Courchevel. I've attended 2 of them myself in 2022, right? So this is things which are changing, which I never used to hear 10 years back, so something which is going to be the new travel happening, new segment, I would say. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think what we need to do is discuss a little bit later, is Europe ready to handle this, or are all destinations ready, or are we still limited to a few destinations in Europe? But just on the segments, Paramjit, from your side in terms of the leisure sector predominantly, how are the family tours and the series and ad hocs looking in terms of coming back onto the market in Europe in 23?
Paul, I think the markets fundamentally are strong. They have the potential and they have the money to spend. The problems that the series segments are facing currently is the uncertainty over the visas. So, series departures will have fixed dates if clients can get their visas within that time and travel on those dates, fine, but no one's really sure if they will because of the uncertainty. The other thing about the India market that we've seen over the past few years, and this continues post-COVID as well, is that both FIT and growth and groups are important segments, but the growth of the FIT segment is really, really sharp. If you look at their graphs, the FIT curve will be much steeper than the group curve. Not to say that the groups are not important, they still are, but I think the FIT segments will become more important as we go along. But just to add to what Ankush was saying, I also think another segment that is really picking up in India is people traveling for attending sports events. So we've seen record numbers going for Cricket World Cups, the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, and then even for things like Premier League games, La Liga games, there are people who are now willing to buy the tickets and travel to go and see these, keynote matches. So, that's another segment that's picking up. But again, I think the growth of the FIT segment is linked to something that I mentioned earlier. I think it's going to come out of, a lot of that growth is going to come out of the FIT, out of the tier 2 and tier 3 markets of India as well. But as you said, we can touch on that a little later.
Absolutely. Well, that's interesting. And I think the audience that listening today will be very interested to hear a little bit about the potential of FIT, because it's a segment that has always been very strong. But I think a lot of people associated the Indian market also with purely on escorted groups and ad hoc groups, etc. So I think the growth of FIT is very interesting. We'll touch upon that for sure. Mahip, in terms of the Nordic region, which destinations are looking, which segments are looking strong, particularly to the Nordic region?
So for Nordic region, mainly ad hoc groups is something which we are really looking forward for, because the problem with the FITs are, there are a lot of back and forth. There are a lot of delays from the DMC side in replying, and FIT customers are very impatient. They want everything quick, and sometimes after taking the code, they just disappear. So FIT is something which the DMCs in Scandinavia are not really keen about to deal with. So, but the main focus for them will be ad hoc groups, because and ad hoc groups are still flexible with the dates. I'm not talking about the series. Series has a specific dates, but the ad hoc groups can can sometimes do the date change in case the visas are delayed or if they are getting some cheaper flights on a different date. So ad hoc groups will be the major USP for India market, and I think that will be very cost-effective packages also, because Scandinavia being famous for a expensive destination. If FITs, if you're going, using a lot of public transportation, still it works out cheaper. But if you need everything on private basis, the FIT packages works out very expensive. So I think ad hoc groups will be the main source of business for both sides, even for the Indian sellers and for the DMCs in Scandinavia.
Thank you very much. And is that reflected also, Uma and Dylan, in terms of your business coming in for 23? Is it a lot of FIT business, or are you focusing more on ad hoc and series for 23?
I think we're getting FIT, it's increasing, but I agree with Mahip, there's a lot of backwards and forwards, so it's quite tricky to deal with. But once you get the business, it's good revenue generating because it's generally long tours. I also agree with what Baranjit said about this, the sports element of it. We've seen some sport business, so we did a lot for the cricket and some football clubs at the moment. There's a couple of new companies in Mumbai who are really aggressive in selling sport tourism. So yeah, Dylan, what about?
Yeah, I mean, we've always had a strong FIT department with the Indian market. We've FITs for Indians, what we believe is it's not the traditional 1 to 9 passengers. They have small miniature family groups that travel together. And we've sort of rebranded FITs to up to 18 passengers. That's sort of that gray zone, which nobody wants to touch. It's not a group, it's not an FIT, but we think it's an Indian FIT. So yeah, FIT has always been good for us, and groups has equally has been very, very good for us. But yeah, FITs for sure is a growing market. It's always been a growing market, but it's a very complicated Indian travel. It's just the itineraries, the programs themselves. They're very heavy and they're very complicated. So the kind of resources that you need in order to get your product right. I mean, you're going to need a lot of resources. That's the first thing. You can't automate much with Indian programs and itineraries. There's a lot of complications when it comes to sort of the dietary requirements, the kind of catering, the cuisines that are required in certain areas around Europe. And certain areas of Europe have never even done it or never even heard of it. And it becomes very complicated, especially when our passengers want to travel to those unknown destinations, because they've done the standard sort of the Western Europe, they've done everything else, and now they want to go into the unknown regions. Unfortunately, the unknown regions are not well equipped to deal with certain cultures, and India being one of those. So, but I think eventually they'll get there. Obviously, once they see the influx of Indian passengers, like once upon a time, Paris, France never used to, they were never used to dealing with Indian customers. Once in our own time, Switzerland was never used to dealing with Indian customers. We introduced the Indian market to Switzerland. We introduced them to Paris. You have to explain things to the suppliers, and eventually they'll get there. Yeah, but yeah, for sure. I mean, once wherever Indians go, then everybody learns to adjust to them. So, which is a good thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I think education is very, very important with the Indian market. I think there's a perception sometimes that it's so high maintenance in terms of it, but I think it's a question of learning how to deal and understanding what their requirements are. And I just want to go a little bit deeper into this. Actually, is maybe Paramjit, this is something for you in particular. Is which parts of India are the European visitors coming from in India, and maybe for our audience, maybe give it just a little bit on terms of the food, which Dylan touched on a little bit in terms of the complexities, and is it as complicated to understand the dietary requirements as maybe many in Europe believe it is?
Right. So I'll tackle the first part of your question first. I'm actually speaking to you right now from a tier 2 city in the eastern part of India called Bhubaneswar. I have always been convinced right from the start that the potential of the tier 2 cities could not be ignored, and anyone who did not focus on these cities is missing a trick. So, we've tied up with an organization here that runs a series of trade engagement workshops with agents from tier 2 cities in 10 to 12 cities of India every year. And actually, Ankush's company, TBO, is also one of the companies who are, attending and participating in all 10. So am I, on behalf of my partners, LBG Learning. So to answer your question, the demand for European travel is going to come from all parts of India. It's not just going to be restricted to north or west or east or south. So I'm getting demand out of Indore in central India, out of Bhubaneswar in the east, Cochin in the south, Visakhapatnam in the south, Ahmedabad in the west. It's from everywhere. The challenge is only for training and educating the agents in these tier 2 cities about the destination so that they can sell them to their clients in a better way. The tourism boards in India, they don't go much into the tier 2 cities. So there is not a lot of engagement with the agents in tier 2 cities that as much as there should be, which is why the platform that we are using, which Ankush's company is also using, are important for us to get that engagement. So that's the first part of your question. The second part of your question, yes, food will always be a critical factor because a very rough ballpark figure, 50% of all the people that you're going to get from India coming into your destinations are going to be vegetarian. And in India, vegetarian is a very complex term. There are different kinds of vegetarian. There are Jain vegetarians. There are people who will eat eggs but not eat some other vegetarian stuff. And then there's, all kinds of different combinations and permutations. So understanding the food requirements of Indian travelers is critical. And this is where it comes in when we talk about training on the other side. We need to have agents. Uma is a veteran. She knows everything like the back of her hand, but she's an exception. Most of the agents who are coming in to try and handle the Indian market, they need to get India ready. And that's where, the education side of it becomes important, both here in India to train the agents how to sell European destinations, and on the other side to get the inbound tour operators there India ready. And food is a big part of that.
Super. I think you explained it very well, and I appreciate that very much. And I wanted to ask Jude if this is the same in the MICE and corporate market with the complexities of the dietary requirements, and are the European destinations well versed now in terms of being able to handle the MICE business well, in terms of the complexities?
Yeah, so if you take the Western European destinations, they're extremely well versed in handling Indian groups. So you have, DMCs based out of, say, London or Switzerland, who have been working with the Indian market for a long time. So they can handle the cuisine part of the groups which come into their countries. The challenge lies in newer offbeat destinations. A is that you may not have Indian restaurants in those cities. That's one point. Second is the local DMCs. They will give you a great product. They will, they'll give you the itinerary and things like that. But where they falter or where they do not understand is the cuisine. So that's wherein mainland DMCs are handling groups which are traveling to, say, for example, Scandinavia. So for a Scandinavian group, say Finland or Norway or any of these places, you would have a DMC that is handling it from UK or Switzerland. You never have, the local DMCs handling, and that is where the challenge lies, because they don't understand. Groups are a bit flexible. Diet is, vegetarian diet, of food. That's the integral part of the entire exercise. So I think that's where the challenge lies for local DMCs. Educating them is the way forward. If they handle a few groups, that's how they will get the experience.
I think you've touched on a very good point there, Jude. A very important point is that the importance of DMCs in handling the Indian market is very much there. And not only any DMC can handle the Indian market, it's the specialists like European Coming, like Uma and Dylan's organization. And that expertise in deciphering what could be potentially looked at as complexities and the challenges are actually, when you have that experience and when you're educated on how to handle the Indian market, it's much easier. And obviously the local DMCs that don't have the experience in handling them, they do struggle, of course. And that's when a lot of questions start going to and fro, and the time is lost in converting this into business. So maybe, Ankush, maybe you could just a little bit more on this before we, first of all,
just coming back in 30 seconds. If you can just take somebody else, I'll just join up.
Uma, maybe you can tell us now from your experience, is it an enormously long process to learn how to handle the Indian market effectively, or is it something a local DMC could pick up with a little bit of education?
No, it's not a long process. We all started. When I started 25 years ago, I didn't even understand how the Indian market worked, but you need to listen to your clients and you need to be able to communicate what your clients are telling you to the suppliers. And then the suppliers who are willing to work with the market, they will learn. Yeah, so, I mean, there has to be hand-holding from both sides. So the clients need to be open with the DMCs, and the DMCs need to be willing to take on the feedback and pass that on to the hotels or the entrances or whatever. One of the reasons why certain entrances, like for example Mount Titlis and Jungfrau, etc., they do so well is because they actually understood how to cater to the Indian market. They understand there's certain elements that are required. And Baranjit very rightly said there's different types of vegetarians in India. They don't necessarily want Indian food, but there should be the capability to provide a vegetarian meal which tastes of something, and that's not difficult. They just have to learn. So no, absolutely not.
It depends. It depends. It might be difficult, but yeah, I think Yeah, as Uma was talking about the vegetarian food. I mean, I think the one thing that I've learned anyway from my career is that, and it's irrelevant whether it's an Indian market or whether it's China, or it doesn't matter what market it is. If you are culturally do not understand the market, you're not going to be able to do business with that market. I can put 10 Europeans in the same position versus if I put myself, who I'm of Indian origin, in that same, I will understand the Indian customer 100 times better than my European counterparts, for sure. And that's the success of Europe Incoming. It's because the owners are Indian. That's why we're so successful in the Indian market. Versus our competitors, for example, they might be European. It's very difficult for us. Doesn't matter how much you educate them, they still won't understand the cultural significance of certain things that India or any other culture, it could be America, it could be China, it could be anything else. So it's, for example, if I was to go to Indonesia and try to sell there, an Indonesian person will understand that culture better than I will. So I think it's a cultural, people have to understand cultures, not just, oh, well, they need, certain Indian food items, or they need this item, or they need to actually understand the culture about what the actual Indian customer, the passenger, thinks and feels when they want to travel and what their expectations are. That's what's extremely important.
Well, sorry, I'll chip in now. One is, apart from the food, which I knew was a common feedback, majority of the Indians will never show up on time. Okay.
Cultural. So, there you go.
Right. So you need to say, our DMC partners need to be a little patient. In India, 1:30 means 1:45. Most of them, not me. I would be there at 1:30. I'm sure Param would be there as well. And this is a frustration which I keep hearing. I'm at the airport, there's no car waiting because you were 45 minutes late, right? That's why the car isn't waiting, right? So I understand this challenge. Two is, we hate to walk as people, culture again, right? If you expect the guys going to walk 5 miles in Iceland, to see the volcano, it's a tough call, right? Because fundamentally, as Indians in India, we generally don't walk. And these are very small points, which can be bothersome for an operator in Nordic, which I strongly recommend, apart from the other food, etc., which are pretty common. I think these are the basic items. And I think room service is something we're a little kind of cautious about. Every Indian will get up and have his tea in the room, which sometimes in a lot of hotels, in this part of the world have no coffee makers or tea makers in their room. Everybody has to go down, for their breakfast, which for some reason, the Indians like their first cup of coffee or tea in the bed or whatever in the room before they move into the breakfast area.
Yeah,
these are very basic things, but I think can change the difference in understanding the culture and the behavior of an Indian traveler, apart from food, etc.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. It's culture at the end of the day, Ankush, right? It's all culture. I understand that. I understand. My mum wakes up in the morning and she has to have tea in the bed, so I understand that. I understand the walking as well. Completely understand, because it's family, right? We understand that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But I think, thanks, guys. And I think it's very interesting for our audience to hear that these very simple things make such a difference to, the room service concept. And I think there's a lot of hotels in Europe that are very flexible and understand the culture, and they get it, and they've handled it for many years. And their occupancy of Indian source market is large, and it's very profitable for them. There are others who are a little bit nervous to get onto that, onto it, and really open up to the Indian market. And one of the key objectives of today was to maybe simplify things. And listening to you guys, it's not particularly rocket science to figure out how to handle a market which has its own cultures, but is a fantastic traveler. They're probably very happy to try local dishes. They're probably as long as it's prepared in the way that is fine for the Indian travelers. And that is all done with education. So I think educational part of this discussion is fundamental in Europe becoming a much stronger destination in general. And I think a lot of the national tourist boards, and I think some of them may be listening today, are planning and are already starting to think about how to get closer with the Indian market, maybe not just the major cities, but the tier 2 cities, and really learn and absorb that culture and start bringing it back and maybe opening up much more. So I think it's very important. Can I just ask also, in terms of other aspects, the shopping, the culture, the destinations, what besides the food element, would you say, Paramjit, that that in terms of the sightseeing, the destinations, the culture, the historical side is typical as most markets. There's nothing particularly complex or there. The Indian travelers generally want to see the destinations. They want to do some shopping. They want to see some sites. Nothing too complex there either.
Okay, so first of all, everyone needs to understand that Indians are big shoppers. They love to shop, and it's a me too or a me better than you thing, especially in some parts of India like the north. Bringing things from overseas destinations and displaying them in your home is a big thing that makes you stand out from your social circle and stuff. So Indians are big shoppers. I just like to echo what Ankush said. He said that Indians don't like to walk, which is absolutely right. But when it comes to shopping, an Indian will happily walk 3 kilometers in a mall to do some shopping. But if you put an itinerary item saying that we've got a 3-kilometer trek for you, he'll put his hands up and say, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you crazy? I'm not going to walk for 3 kilometers," but he'll happily do it in a mall. So we are really big shoppers. And now we are also among the world's big spenders. So, Indians are a great source market for anyone who's looking to use shopping as a draw. It's not complicated in other areas, but it does require, as Dylan said, I completely agree with him. It requires an understanding of the culture. It requires an understanding of the mindsets. And this is easier said than done, Paul, because in India, the spending patterns and the priorities and the way of life changes every 500 kilometers. When you when you travel from North India to South, East India to West, everything changes. The food, the culture, the weather, the spending patterns, everything changes. So India is not a one-size-fits-all market. And this is something that many people don't understand. So this is where, when I started doing my own work, I realized that this training and this education was really important, which is why I partnered with a platform like LBG Learning based out of London. Now, LBG Learning uses technology to train and educate in these areas on both the supplier side and on the India side. So I look after that part on the India side, because we saw a gap. It's really critical to have this education and to have these expectation levels understood on both sides. But if you're able to do that, and it's easier for Indian entities like Europe Incoming being run by Indian promoters, it is easier, but it can be done. I mean, it takes a little time to understand India. India is a complicated market and Indians are complicated people, but it's not, if it's not rocket science, it's science, but it's not rocket science. So it can be done. It is possible.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you've summarized quite a few things very, very nicely there. Just wanted to change the angle very, very slightly. Mahip, obviously in 2022, Indian business was coming back. Were the problems that we're facing in Europe, i.e. the resource crisis, hotels not having as many staff as they used to, same with the coach companies and the drivers, were these kind of operational issues a problem for the Indian market in 2022? Obviously, it's going to carry on a little bit in 2023. Is this something you envisage is still a problem that we need to continue to rectify in Europe?
Absolutely. 2022 was still manageable, but still, since like this, it was still not 100%, we were back to normal. But in 2023, Europe has to be very well prepared with the reward times and with all the logistical supports, prompt replies. There are a lot of restaurants which has closed during 2020, during COVID periods. They are still planning to open up. So we have to, kind of get in touch with all the restaurants and look forward that they are 100% operational before the summer season starts. And all the hotels are ready with the inventories. I know, again, this year also we are a little bit late in launching our series departures for 2023 because of small episode of COVID again during December. So all the operators, all the series departures operators in India were again on the back foot because they were not sure that 2023 series departure will 100% run successfully. And by the time now, when we started getting the bookings for the series departures, most of the hotels are sold out. because the other market, the European market and the American market has already taken over all the inventories. So we have to find out the new hotels, the new inventories, new coach companies. We have to be very fast on the replies and very supportive in all the demands and requirements for the Indian market, as we have been discussing that India is very specifically, minutely kind of choosy market in different kind of products and services. And if we don't cater, because travel agent in India, are dependent on DMCs. And if DMC doesn't give 100% support to the agents, then agents, it's not like destination where they can book directly the coach in Norway or Sweden. They have to be dependent to some DMCs. And that's why, in 2023, the DMCs especially in Scandinavia, has to work very hard to gather all this business, which China is not really working out for them. So to get the business from India, I think they have to really work very hard.
Thank you very much on that one, Mahib. That's very clear. And I think it was a European problem in 22. Once we lost so much of our amazing knowledge and talent in tourism in 2022. It seems to be slightly improving in 23, but I still think some of the hospitality industry is struggling. So that's even more important that the DMCs will know where the hotels and the restaurants are that can still give a good service for the Indian customer. So I think that's very important moving forward. Ankush, I just wanted to ask you a little bit on that as well. In terms of Europe being ready for your large volume of customers, are you quite confident now that Europe is ready to take and handle and operate successfully your clients for 2023?
So Paul, in the last couple of months, there were hardly any complaints. I mean, very honest to you, it was there in the summer, lost baggages, food not being delivered in rooms for an hour, and nobody coming to collect your bags, porters, etc. I think that challenge was there, but I think since October, I've not been hearing people having complaints, and especially during the winter months when a lot of people have been there for Northern Lights, skiing, etc. So I don't see that challenge personally, if you ask me. I think things are pretty okay. But yes, if it happens like 2022, nobody expects it to be, because everybody thinks the world has opened up and life is back to normal. So if some hoteliers / DMCs or coaches haven't prepared themselves, I think they should do it starting April, when you have the Indians coming in this part of the world. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think the summer season will be a good barometer whether things have. I'm sure you're right; they've improved to a certain extent, and we felt that the airports after September in Europe improved as well, because that was to say the least, a very sticky situation during last summer there as well. Jude, in terms of operationally in Europe for your MICE business, are you fairly confident 23? We're back to relatively good levels of service in Europe.
So there are a few challenges which are yet there, which I foresee in 23 as well. One would be the visa issues, which will continue into 23. I think that is because of the manpower issues that the consulates and embassy is having in India. All their staff have not come back to India, so that's where the challenge lies. Especially for group visas, for FITs individuals, you can apply online, but for a group visa, it becomes a challenge. On ground also, there are a lot of challenges from the manpower point of view. There is shortage of staff in hotels, so we face that when there are groups happening. More importantly, there is shortage of vehicles. Coaches, vehicles, there is a major shortage of drivers for coaches and vehicles all over Europe, especially if there is an event happening in that particular city. The shortage is amplified, and the other issue is that the airfares are extremely high going into Europe at this point of time. So that is affecting not specifically too much the MICE movements, but I think it's affecting the series departures quite a bit, because the airfares to Europe are almost 20-25% more than pre-COVID. Yeah, so these are the challenges what we face operationally when we're operating any group to Europe. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very, very clear. We have a huge amount of questions. I'm just going to run through a couple of them because we're not going to have time to answer them. But one of them is about repeaters. what sort of percentage of repeaters to Europe do we see from the Indian market? Anybody have any idea? Paramjit, is this something you'll be able to shed a bit of light on? Are there is there a huge percentage of the Indian market that are repeat travelers?
I think they do get a little into the background when it comes to first timers, but I think Ankush is the best placed person to answer this. Ankush, what do you think?
So there's a lot of repeat, absolutely, yes, especially for Western Europe, but I think when it comes to Nordic, it's just an emerging, fastest emerging destinations, I would say. So it's very tough to say about repetitive in Scandinavia, but Nordic, but definitely for Western Europe, I think every mature traveler, and now obviously people who have now have aspirations to go beyond Asia Pacific, Dubai, obviously to experience the typical Western European cities. But repetitive, absolutely, yes, Paul.
Okay.
Paul, can I just add? I just add to what Ankush is saying. So one of my partners is a big DMC based out of Budapest in East Europe, and I saw a gap in the market here with DMCs offering services specifically for the India market with an understanding of those cultural nuances and the food and stuff like that. So I think Eastern Europe is going to be a big destination over the next few years. So Hungary, Austria, Croatia has now come under Schengen, the Czech Republic, Poland, Romania. These destinations are all new destinations for a lot of the Indian market. And I think these destinations are going to be really coming into focus over the next few years. That's just my viewpoint.
I think that's a very good point. I think also price-wise in parts of Eastern Europe are quite attractive as well.
Yes, prices are attractive. Connectivity is increasing. Air India has just announced daily services to Vienna from Delhi and Mumbai. Austrian has announced services from Delhi and Mumbai, not dailies, but services. And Indigo, for example, is offering code shares with Turkish into Eastern Europe as well. So I think this market, it's going to really pick up, and we should start looking at these as alternative destinations.
Sure.
If I can just add some data here from one of our biggest clients, one of the biggest leisure operators out of India. When they receive 10 calls from a customer, at least 8 of those calls are still for Western Europe, which is surprising facts. Even Paramjit, I heard the same thing, what you were saying, that Eastern Europe is gaining traction, and Umar and I, we've been discussing, do we start offering more services, deeper services in that part of Europe, because we're known for Western Europe as a DMC. But when we done a survey of our customers, we asked them what percentage of your customers are still asking for Western Europe. They're saying 80% of their customers are still asking for Western Europe, and they are repeat buyers. For the Nordic region, not quite sure about that, but for Western Europe, as I think Paramjit and everyone's mentioned, that and even Ankush mentioned, it's very popular for the Indian market, and there will definitely always be repeat buyers for those regions.
Super. Very, very quickly, Ankush, one question. We've had it about 3 times. It's just, what is the strength of the OTAs on the Indian market? How strong are the OTAs?
So I would say on the international, Paul, I'd still say it's about 50% would be OTAs. The balance, 85 to 88%, still remains offline. Will remain offline, and even world markets like US today have a 50-50 split. And plus, I think the growth of India and the opportunity, and I just give you some numbers, Paul. 160 million passports, 26 million trips happened in 2019, 26 million students, including labor, including corporate. So if I think VFR, actually, if you see, probably 10 million were actually leisure, right? There's still 130 million of people who never left India, ever. So these are the emerging young, who are aspirations in tier 3 and beyond cities, which will obviously start traveling into destinations which is close from home, and then start looking at Europe, Western Europe, and then start looking at other parts of Europe. I think India is very well positioned right now, with the growth of in terms of passports, population, obviously the economic growth. I mean, India is poised to be the 3rd largest economy by 28. We're already the 4th largest, right? I mean, when you have money, and especially young, don't believe in buying houses and cars, right? They want to live memories and experiences. So I don't see any reason, these numbers will absolutely not grow. And OTAs, and I say online, offline is here to coexist, but the TAM is so large for everybody to have their own share.
Very clear. Thank you.
Interesting, yeah.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah.
There's a small potential, and I'm sure I'd like to get your feedback on this, guys. But there's out of the 1.3 billion, 1.2 billion people, I think it's about 130 million or 200 million that are very tech savvy. So they are okay in purchasing products via their mobile phone. the balance of the population of India, they have mobile phones, but they're still a little bit not sure of, you know, buying goods from their phone. So they'll still need to go and meet a travel agent face to face and purchase. I forget the name of that of those sectors, but yeah, there's huge amount of growth potential in India. Massive.
Super.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, everyone. We have a few other questions. I noticed one question about the price of giving the food that the Indian market was requiring, especially was in Norway, where it would increase the cost of the tour by providing the price. There are quite a few questions we haven't had time to reach to, but I just wanted to kind of summarize and thank everybody. We know the Chinese market has pretty much been paused for the last 2 or 3 years due to the current COVID policy, and things may be changing generally there. But I think this is an unbelievable opportunity for people to think, actually, there's an emerging market from India that's going to be second to none. And I think you've all given us a great insight into the potential of the market. Yes, we have visa issues. Yes, we have other issues in Europe in terms of flight access, which we believe will be improving as we speak in the coming months. So I think you've given a phenomenal idea and belief in those that really want to delve into the market and understand that this is a market of huge potential. And if you're educated properly, and if your suppliers are educated properly, there is some certainly exciting times ahead. So I want to thank each and every one of you for your fantastic insight. Much appreciated. This will be recorded for those that could not join, and we will answer the questions, maybe send the questions to our lovely panelists to get a couple of answers to those that have a few more questions. But thank you all very much for joining. And we're wishing you all a very successful season from you guys in India and from those suppliers in Europe. Thank you once again, and we'll see you very soon. And goodbye from everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.